Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Democratic Leader of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, the Chairwoman of the House Republican Conference, the Honorable Kathy McMorris Rogers, and our honored guest, Brigadier General Wilma L. Vaught, Dr. Jill Biden, and the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Statuary Hall. Thank you all for joining us for this annual celebration of Women's History Month. Each month, we gather as members of Congress and friends to lift up the legacy of every woman who has stepped forward to expand and defend freedom throughout our history. The oath of office we take as members of Congress is to support and defend the Constitution and the American people. Last year, as many of you know, we honored 4 women Supreme Court justices who support and defend the Constitution with their wisdom. Today, we are privileged to pay tribute to honor the women who support and defend the Constitution and the American people with their heroism, America's women veterans. Today, it is such an honor to be joined in this celebration by 2 of our nation's greatest champions for women veterans and military families. Our magnificent First Lady, Michelle Obama, and the outstanding Dr. Jill Biden. Madam First Lady, Dr. Biden, thank you for your leadership in creating the Joining Forces initiative to empower our service members, veterans, caregivers, and families. As we celebrate all women veterans, we're also proud to be honoring one woman veteran in particular, retired Brigadier General Wilma L. Vaught, U.S. Air Force. A trailblazing woman who gave nearly 30 years of service to our country. One of the first women to become Brigadier General. The first woman to deploy with a Strategic Air Command bombardment wing on operational deployment. One of the most decorated women in American history. Now General Vaught is President Emeritus of the Women in Military Service for America Memorial Foundation. Keep that in mind. Here we have a slight change in our scheduled program. Your program would show Dr. Biden speaking later in the program. But after 340 days in space, astronaut Scott Kelly has come back to Earth, landing in Kazakhstan late last night. It is the longest time an American astronaut has ever spent in space, an historic achievement for our nation. That's an applause line. It is also personal for us in the Congress through the connection of Scott Kelly's brother, Mark Kelly, also an astronaut and husband of our former colleague, Gabby Giffords. We always like to associate ourselves with greatness one way or another. Dr. Biden must leave early to be sure she makes it to Houston in time to help welcome Captain Kelly home on behalf of all Americans. Please send him our congratulations, Dr. Biden. We thank you for making time for this gathering, and it is my privilege to welcome Dr. Jill Biden, champion of our veterans.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Leader Pelosi, for hosting today's event and for your enduring commitment to those who serve and sacrifice so much for our country. Let me start by apologizing, as the leader said, for leaving a little early. And as Leader Pelosi said, I have the honor of traveling to Houston to welcome home astronaut Scott Kelly from a year in space. We're so proud of Scott Kelly, and it's going to be a really special celebration. I'll be joined by Scott's twin brother, Mark Kelly, Gabby Giffords, and members from Scott Kelly's family. And as part of our Joining Forces Education Initiative, I have invited 3 military-connected students from Aberdeen High School in Maryland to travel with me to tour the Johnson Space Center and welcome home retired Navy Captain Scott Kelly. I want to show these students that if they work hard and if they dream big, there is no limit to where they can go. And it's always a pleasure to spend time with our First Lady, Michelle Obama, who works tirelessly for military families. And I'm proud to call her my friend and my partner in joining forces. I'd also like to thank the chair of the House Republican Conference, Kathy McMorris Rogers, for her leadership and support of our military families. And Brigadier General Vaught, you have dedicated your life to our country, and we are truly honored in your presence. You are an inspiration. Madam Leader, in 2010, you hosted an event here in the Capitol to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the first women to fly U.S. military planes. The Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPs, went overlooked for too long. So you, along with a bipartisan group of members of Congress, made sure their service was celebrated. I'm proud to stand here with you 6 years later as we continue our commitment to honoring and supporting our women veterans. It's because of those women like the WASPs, like Brigadier General Vaught, and so many of you here today, that Michelle and I started our Joining Forces initiative in the first place. You know, Michelle and I talked back on election night, back in 2008, about how the two of us could work together to serve those courageous Americans the way that they've served each and every one of us. Together, the First Lady and I traveled all across the country, starting the dialogue with service members and their loved ones to hear what kinds of support were most critically needed and to learn what kinds of advocacy could make the greatest difference. What we heard during those conversations was very similar from what we hear today from all American families. They want to ensure that their kids have a good education, that their family has the health care that they deserve, and that they have the opportunity to have a good paying job. As a military mom and a lifelong educator, I also understand on a personal level how essential it is for teachers to be trained to support the children of service members. You know, it was very personal for the Biden family when our son Bo was deployed to Iraq in 2008. And Bo's teacher put a picture of Bo's unit alongside the door to the classroom, so that every time Natalie, our granddaughter Natalie's class, would walk into that classroom, they would be reminded that Natalie's daddy was fighting a war. Similarly, Michelle and I know that some of the most talented, hardworking, resourceful employees in the country are veterans and military spouses. For many military families, education and employment opportunities are essential. Studies show that women veterans are more likely to get a college education. Yet, less than a quarter of women veterans use their GI Bill benefits. It's so important that we ensure women veterans have the tools and the resources they need to succeed, because a new job or degree can empower a veteran and her family. It gives them their shot at the American dream, and they've earned nothing less. In the 5 years since Michelle and I have launched the Joining Forces, more and more businesses have stepped up and hired more than 850,000 veterans and military spouses. Because here is what we know. Our servicemen and women are among the most highly skilled workers in this country. Humility, discipline, work ethic, it's in their blood. It's who they are. Institutions of higher education have been making some big strides in helping veterans succeed on campus. And more than 850 governors and city and county officials are working to end veterans' homelessness in their communities, and many have already done it. Michelle and I intend to continue pushing forward on this work for our remaining time in the White House and beyond. And we hope that all of you here today will join us to show the members of our military and veteran families that we stand by all of those who are willing to do so much, to sacrifice everything for the good of our great nation. Thank you again for having me here today. Have a wonderful Women's History Month. God bless our troops, our veterans, and their families. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chairwoman of the House Republican Conference, the Honorable Kathy McMorris Rogers.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor for me to be able to join everyone, and thank you for being here. I certainly want to recognize Leader Pelosi as a trailblazer herself, as the first woman female speaker. Mom of 5, grandmother of 9. And it is an honor for me to be able to be here with the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and Dr. Biden. And I have the pleasure of co-chairing the Military Family Caucus with Sanford Bishop. And we, early on, spent a lot of time together as we were thinking through priorities. And it's great to be on the stage with you today, and certainly recognizing General Vaught. As we walk these halls, it's hard to miss the bronze and marble reminders of the great women who lived before us. We follow their lead, remember their struggles, and enjoy the rights and freedoms that they have helped us secure. So often we talk about the past, but Women's History Month provides us an opportunity to challenge people to think about those who live today and create history for the next generation. Today we honor women who dream big, set goals, and accepted the call to serve our country and protect our freedom. Women like General Wilma Vaught, the first woman to deploy with the Strategic Air Command Operational Unit, and who in 1980 became the first woman selected for promotion to Brigadier General in the Comptroller career field. And we honor another young woman who a few years later, in 1984, joined the Air Force and made the personal decision she was going to be the first female fighter pilot if and when the ban was lifted. When the ban was finally lifted, this young woman faced another hurdle, a challenging environment in which she was often the only woman in the room, and where not everyone in the room wanted her to succeed. By working hard and proving her ability, she not only met that goal, she became the first woman to command a fighter squadron in combat, in charge of a 24 fighter aircraft and personnel responsible for deploying anywhere in the world in 24 hours. During her military service, she flew 325 combat hours and was awarded the Bronze Star, among other commendations. She broke down the barriers, faced hostility, and was tremendously successful in a male-dominated field. But it's important to remember that success wasn't just because she was a woman. It was because of her leadership and her results. And today, that young woman is our friend and colleague, Congresswoman Martha McSally. Martha is just one of the historic 104 women, I see many in the room today, serving in these halls of Congress and making history in our own way. While we come from different backgrounds and have different disagreements at times, we have one thing in common. We are breaking down barriers for our daughters and their daughters' daughters. From the first woman to represent their states, to women who've made dramatic career changes, from the trailblazers and the innovators to passionate advocates for the voiceless. From wives and mothers, lawyers and nurses to lifelong public servants, and women who went from secretary to the corner office. We honor you, and we thank you. All of us in leadership positions are showing to girls around this country that with hard work, they can achieve anything. No dream is too big, no goal too far-fetched. What I believe as a lawmaker is what I believe as a mother of two young girls. We should not be defined by where we come from, but empowered by what we can become. Let's focus on a bright future for every American, especially women, to live courageously, follow their hearts, see potential, believe in ourselves, and be risk takers. You all have made a difference in the world and left a mark so every American can feel safe and secure in their lives and future, and where women can keep making history for years to come. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brigadier General Wilma L. Vaught, United States Air Force.
It is a privilege indeed to be here today to be representing the veterans, the women veterans who have served our country. And I think I decided what I was going to talk about today was how history affected my life. I graduated from high school in a small school in Illinois in June of 1948. And little did I realize that in June of 1948, the legislation was being signed into law that said women could be full-fledged members of the military. And I can tell you that if I had known it, it wouldn't have meant a thing to me. And as I think about this, as I think about graduating from this small school with about 56 students in the high school, my class was the largest to ever graduate, 24, 12 men, 12 boys, 12 girls. So needless to say, as I think about this, I wonder sometimes, who would ever have dreamed that in about 80 years I would be standing here in front of you? Not me. And after graduating from the University of Illinois, working for an atomic energy company for about 5 years, I received a letter from an Army recruiter telling me that I could get a commission and that I could manage and supervise. And that's what I wanted to do. So I joined the Air Force. You know, what can I say? And when I think back to that time in 1957, when I think about the opportunities open, number one, there was one colonel's position, only one, that I could compete for, the Director of Women in the Air Force. And I couldn't think about becoming a general because the law said that women could not be generals or admirals. So that was out. So, and as I think about, and not only that, that law that passed in 1948 said that we were limited to 2% of the force. And at that time, we were 0.7%. So by 1967, during the Vietnam War, that law was changed. The limit was taken away, the 2% limit, and the restriction on promotions was taken away. Now, if you think that at that point in my life, 10 years after I'd gone in, I immediately thought, I'm going to be a general. I didn't. As a matter of fact, I went to Vietnam instead. And then when I think about 1971 to 73, and at that time, women didn't get the same benefits as men in the service. You know, if you got married, he couldn't get an ID card, couldn't go to the basic exchange, the commissary, any of those things. And one of our Air Force first lieutenants sued the Secretary of Defense and said, you know, that she was being discriminated against. And she was advised that, you know, she would surely win. She didn't, she lost. But that case got picked up by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Who took it forward to the Supreme Court, and that was her first Supreme Court victory. And she is very proud of it. And that opened the door to other lawsuits. That was how ROTC got open to women, lawsuits by women saying they were discriminated against. There were 4 women suing over the academies being closed to women when they were open. They sued about women being forced to leave the service on the day they were diagnosed as being pregnant. They sued on the principle that if women had children in their household, they had to get out. They sued about that, and they won all those lawsuits, and things changed. Well, some of those things didn't apply to me because I never had children and I never was married. But, you know, you couldn't help but be aware of the changes that were taking place in women having greater opportunities. In 1980, I was promoted to Brigadier General, as she said. And at that same year, when you think about history, that was the year in that time frame that the VA discovered that, my goodness, we have a lot of women veterans. And we're not doing our facilities for women veterans. We don't have the right kind of doctors. We don't have the right kind of facilities. And it started changing then, it's been changing ever since. And we have the members, particularly the women members of Congress, to thank for many of those changes. And another thing happened in 1982 that you wouldn't think would be particularly important, but it was important. That was when the first history of women in the military was published by Major General Jean Holm, Air Force retired. Women in the Military, an Unfinished Revolution. And it truly has been a revolution. And I don't know that it's finished yet. But that, for the first time, here I am now, a brigadier general of 2 years, and for the first time, I was able to read the history of women in the military. 1985, I retired as a brigadier general, and I remember it well. There were 7 women generals or admirals, 7, and I was the ranking one, a brigadier general. And when I think about today, we have 3 4-star women, 2 in the Army, generals, and 1 in the Navy as a 4-star. We have come a long way. So I returned to Washington, D.C., wondering what in the world I was going to find to do, because I intended to keep working. And little did I know that Mary Rose Ocar from Ohio, who was a congresswoman, and Senator Frank Murkowski were busy doing something that was going to influence my life, because they were working to get legislation passed to build a memorial honoring all the women who had ever served. And they got it passed and signed into law. In 1985, and of course Frank Murkowski's daughter is now here in the Congress. And I was asked in December of 1986 to be on the board. And in January 1987, I joined the board because there were only 5 general officers or admirals here in the area. And I knew the others weren't going to do this, and I felt one of us had to do it. So I said I would. And so I did. And you know, I intend to do what generals do so well, make comments. And in March, I got a phone call I was sitting at home, and one of the members of the board said, "Why weren't you at the meeting?" I said, "What meeting?" She said, "Oh, that board we're on." I said, "I forgot about it." "What did you do?" She said, "We elected officers and you're the new president." And that was 29 years ago, this month. So, you know, the first year, I had to think through this because I wasn't sure we should build a memorial, because we had worked very hard to integrate ourselves as women with the men. And should we build a memorial that segregated women? And I finally decided, as I began to talk, particularly to the World War II women who had served, this was something we had to do. And you know, when you think about the women, going back to the American Revolution, and at that time, there were about 1.8 million unrecognized women veterans. And you might say, well, why didn't anybody see them? Why were they invisible? Well, because nobody ever asked them to tell their story. The books were written about the men. They didn't even write about the nurses. And that's the way it was. So I felt we have to do this. And so we had to build it, and it had to tell the story and pay tribute to the women. And you don't do these things alone. I had a lot of help with a man that many of you know here, that was here, Jack Murtha, in getting it done. And after we got it done, we still needed a little help. And Jerry Lewis from California helped. And Juanita Millender McDonald, who was a congresswoman, said we need to support this memorial for $5 million a year. And I said, we don't need $5 million. I was wrong. But she got us about $1 million a year, and then what did she do but get cancer, and she died. And I can tell you, I went to her funeral because she was the greatest supporter that I had. And she started something that exists today because she started the caucus of congressional women to come every Memorial Day time frame and put a wreath at the memorial. And they have done it every single year. And they're and Corinne Brown, who's sitting right over here, and Sheila Jackson Lee was another of those women who they were friends of Juanita Millender McDonald, and they have been at every one of the wreath layings, and many of you who still are here are that. And so we still do that. And as I think about the help we had other help too. First Lady Barbara Bush helped. First Lady Hillary Clinton helped up through dedication and a little bit beyond that. And as stated previously by Jill Biden, Michelle Obama and Joe Biden have helped. And since that time, through the Joining Forces thing, and Michelle Obama hosted us at a tea party after I reminded her something that she didn't know, that Eleanor Roosevelt had invited women in to tea at her house. And I asked her if they still serve tea at the White House. And they do. And they did. And it was a great event. We had about 150 people there, and it was wonderful. Thank you again. So we have always also had help. I never saw, and I didn't know her name was Leader Pelosi until today. It's amazing what you can learn. Leader Nancy Pelosi, every time I think I ever saw her, she acknowledged my presence and wanted to know what she could do to help. I don't think I ever answered that question. I should have. I'll think about that. But in closing, you know, until 1948, through World War I, or starting with the American Revolution, to World War II, women answered the call because they wanted to do what they could to serve their country. And when they served in the military in World War I, they weren't military like the men were. They were reservists, every one of them. And World War II, they were in the reserve for the duration plus 6 months. They couldn't be thinking about a career in the military until 1948, when women finally became official members of the military. And so when you think about that, we have come a long way since then. So women have always been volunteers, and I guess we will be until they decide to draft us. And if they do, we are Americans too, and we will want to serve our country. And now the nurses were taken in 1901. The nurse corps were formed. But they weren't formed like the men's corps. The women didn't get rank. And the reason they didn't was that the male members of Congress said women shouldn't be ordering men around. Women have been ordering men around since the beginning of time. And now we're up to about 3 million women veterans. And every single woman veteran can be registered at the memorial. Now, at the moment, we only have about 269,000 registered. We have a long way to go, and we need your help. And I want you to know that that young Marine reservist who was killed in Woodbridge has been registered already. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you, General. Thank you, General, for your exceptional leadership on behalf of America's military women and indeed on behalf of all Americans. Wasn't that something very special? Oh my God. Whatever you want.
You know, I forgot to say that, that January 1st, after 29 years, I retired as being president of the Memorial Foundation. And my replacement is here, Major General D. McWilliams. Where are you, D? Right there. She gets all the worries now.
And they both told me they need some money to pay the rent. I know that I speak for everyone here to say this was a very special experience to hear your history of women in the military and your personal experiences. You honor us with your presence. Thank you, General. And I thank Kathy McMorris Rogers for joining us and saluting America's women veterans in this celebration. Thank you for your inspirational message to us as well and for your leadership in the Congress. And today, following up on what General was telling us, the post-9/11 generation of American women represents the largest percentage of women ever to serve in the military. Securing the right to serve has not come easy for women, as the General has told us. Many military women face down the enemy abroad and discriminatory barriers at home. Many women in uniform have come home to a society that does not recognize or understand fully their service and their heroism. All too often, our military women are the invisible veterans. Yet, their bravery, your bravery, and determination are an inspiration to our nation. You are changing the face of courage in America, and we thank you for that. The presence of so many honored guests here today is a true testament to the respect we all have for our 2 million American women veterans. A thank you to the DC Mayor, Muriel Bowser. Mayor Bowser was with us earlier. I don't know if she's still here, but she was with us earlier. Air Force General Deborah James, American Legion Executive Director Verna Jones, and a special angel for American military families and retirees, Senator Elizabeth Dole. Senator Dole, Senator Secretary Angel, whatever you want to call her, established Caring for Military Families, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Thank you, Senator Dole. Thank you to VA Secretary Bob McDonald for encouraging women veterans to come forward with their heroism and declare, "I'm one." Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We're glad to support the VA's I'm One initiative to help ensure women veterans get the recognition and support they deserve. We're so pleased that Corinne Brown, our ranking member on the Veterans Affairs Committee, has already been acknowledged, is here with us as well. Together, we also acknowledge the women veterans serving in the Congress on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the Capitol. Senator Joni Ernst, Congresswoman Martha McSally has already been acknowledged, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth. I'm acknowledging the women, but I know there are many men veterans in the audience. Will you all stand? We have many friends from the Veterans of Foreign Wars who have joined us as well. John Conyers, Mike Thompson, Secretary McDonald, Tim Walls. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for your service. Together, we must continue to act on our sacred responsibility that just as the military leaves no one behind on the battlefield, when they come home, we leave no veteran behind. At the Women's Memorial in Arlington, carved in glass, cry out the words of a U.S. Army nurse from World War II, words that define the mission of the Women's Memorial, words that embody our purpose here today. And that quote is, "Let the generations know that women in uniform also guaranteed their freedom. And now, it is my privilege to present a woman who has inspired millions of Americans with the grace and strength of her leadership as our First Lady, Michelle Obama. Not yet, not yet, not yet. I'm milking this for all it's worth. She is the power of her position to celebrate and lift up the extraordinary service of our women and men in uniform. Through the Joining Forces initiative, the First Lady is ensuring that the courage and sacrifice of those who serve and that of their families are the center of our national conversation. She is helping ensure that our military women get the full respect and recognition they deserve. Now, please join me in welcoming the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Oh, it is truly a pleasure and an honor to be with you all today as we kick off Women's History Month. Let's just stop and give ourselves a round of applause, ladies. Yes. Just 1 month, I ask? I don't know. I want to start by thanking Leader Pelosi for that very kind introduction and for hosting us here today. This has just been a tremendous, fabulous, exciting program. But I want to thank her for her outstanding leadership every day in Congress. Now, as you know, I don't get the chance to visit Capitol Hill all that often, but when the leader invited me, I was delighted to accept. Like so many of you, I am a big fan of our leader, Nancy, as I like to call her. Over the course of her remarkable career, she's been such an extraordinary leader and advocate on so many important issues, including supporting those who serve our country. And I'm so grateful to her for everything she's done and everything we will continue to do together in the months and years to come. Thank you so much, Nancy. I also want to thank Jill, who has been an outstanding partner in joining forces and such a dear friend for so many years. We could not have gotten so much done if it wasn't for our friendship and partnership in this effort. I also want to absolutely, Jill. I also want to thank Chairwoman McMorris Rogers for her terrific work. It's been a tremendous partnership. And of course, I want to recognize Brigadier General Wilma Vaught. Thank you for that wonderful history of women in the military and women veterans, the story that happens to be her life. General Vaught, one of the most inspiring, trailblazing women I have ever met. Every time I see her, I tell her I want to grow up to be just like her. As we all know, General Vaught wasn't content just to break down barriers for herself. She wasn't content just to pull generations of women in the military up after her. No. In addition to all that, she was also determined to ensure that every person across America knew the stories of these women. So instead of spending her retirement basking in the glow of her many honors, she's working tirelessly, has worked tirelessly, although she is retiring. She has put so much effort and energy into honoring our service women and women veterans, and I am so proud to be here today to honor her for her extraordinary service to this country. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to brilliant, fearless women like General Vaught, today more than 200,000 women are serving our country in just about every role and rank. They're flying fighter jets, training new recruits. They're graduating Army Ranger School, and I met those graduates. They are awesome, fierce. And as you've already heard, they will soon
be welcome in every combat unit in our armed forces. So there is so much progress to celebrate. But we also know that our women in uniform and their 2 million sisters who now hold the rank of veteran, I think that's now 3 million, it's really 3 million, still face plenty of challenges as they serve this country and then transition back to civilian life. One striking reality is that many women veterans don't self-identify as veterans. As a result, too many of them miss out on the benefits that come with serving this country. General Vaught talked about that. Only 1 in 10 women veterans take advantage of their GI Bill. Jill mentioned that earlier. She mentioned 3/4 of women veterans don't use the VA health care system at all. Now, at first, a statistic like these may seem surprising. Folks might wonder, how could these women serve with such honor and then hesitate to even discuss that service when they come home? But when you meet these women and you hear their stories, you begin to understand why they might be reluctant to tout their status as veterans. Take the story of Captain Rolana Brown. Captain Brown will celebrate her 17th year in the Army in May. She's deployed to Iraq and served as a company commander. But when she decided to re-enlist after spending some time in civilian life, many folks asked her how she could possibly put her career ahead of her responsibilities as a mom, a question they wouldn't dream of asking her male colleagues. And then there's specialist Kate Hoyt, who is with us today, rocking a great jacket, by the way. Kate served as an Army photojournalist in Iraq, documenting war on the front lines, riding in convoys and taking cover from mortar fire. But when she walked into a local VA organization, the bartender took one look at her and offered her the membership application for military spouses. I've even heard stories like these from a member of my own team, Colonel Nicole Malkowski, the executive director of our Joining Forces Initiative, who is here with us today, and I love her to death. She is awesome. And she will not acknowledge herself like many of you don't do. Nicole has served in the Air Force for almost 20 years. She was the first female Thunderbird pilot and has flown over 24 combat missions. But here's what Nicole shared with us during the meeting to get ready for this. She said that when she would tell people that she was a fighter pilot, they often wouldn't believe her. And she'd get into this back and forth thing. She'd say, yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. And finally, Nicole would just say, well, Google me. Every single female service member in this room can tell stories like these. Stories of misguided questions, outdated assumptions, and interactions with folks who, for one reason or another, still struggle to believe that a woman can serve her country just as well as a man. But I think we all can agree that when these women have sacrificed so much and have served so bravely, they should never have to hide their accomplishments. They should never have to worry about whether their service will be valued equally. And just like every veteran who has served this country, they should be getting every single one of the benefits they've earned. Absolutely. And that is why I am so proud that my husband in this administration has worked with so many folks in this room to increase funding for the VA to unprecedented levels. I will say that again, to unprecedented levels. And to help expand outreach efforts, particularly to women veterans, to make sure they know about the benefits they're entitled to. That's also why over the past 7 years, we've trained 2,400 veteran healthcare providers in women's health and established a designated women's health provider at every VA medical center in the country. That's also why we set up a women's veterans call center, staffed entirely by women, to answer questions and discuss benefits and to provide referrals to women veterans and their families. But we all know that government alone can't close this gap. We all have to play a role in honoring and supporting our women veterans. And every single one of us needs to step up and do our part. So today, I want to challenge everyone, both in this room and folks around the country, to take action on behalf of women veterans. Let's not just talk about it. If you're a member of Congress, as so many here are already doing, work with us to ensure that all of our veterans get the support they deserve. Then go back to your states and your districts. Find these veterans and service members and connect them and their families to the benefits and opportunities they've earned. If you're a CEO or a hiring manager or an HR director, raise the bar and commit to employing more women veterans. As you've heard, they're some of the most skilled, dedicated workers you could ever have. And bringing them on board isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do for your bottom line. If you're a healthcare provider, make it your point to ask all of your patients if they've served. Make sure every veteran gets the care they deserve. If you're a reporter, a publisher, an editor, tell these stories. They're amazing. Feature these women in your papers and your magazines. Make sure that folks understand that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. And finally, if you're a woman veteran, if you've worn this country's uniform and served us so bravely, I want to ask you to stand tall and share your story. I know that so often you're trained to focus on your team and your mission and not yourself. That's also part of the challenge. But as the music indicates, I can also tell you this. Those years in the military helped to develop skills that uniquely set you apart. I've seen it with my own eyes as I've met with our military members and our veterans all across the country and our spouses. They are amazing individuals. Through your service, you learned what it means to be a real leader, how to work with all kinds of people in all kinds of situations, including challenging life or death situations that many of us could never imagine. Some of you learned how to load weapons onto multi-billion-dollar aircrafts, or how to steer the biggest fleet in the world, or how to perform the most complex high-tech analyses using the most cutting-edge technologies. And all of you learned how to build a team and lead others under pressure and complete any mission in front of you, no matter what it takes. See, that's why it's so important that you tell your own stories, like the general's been doing. You've got to tell your own stories. They're so worth telling. And our girls, our daughters and granddaughters need to hear them, because once people hear about your service and sacrifice, once they see how patriotic you are, trust me, I've seen it. They will slowly but surely start to get what we've gotten, that you all are amazing. You're a gift to us. So tell people you're a veteran. Tell them proudly. Tell them about the extraordinary things you've done to protect us and keep us safe. And when you start to face resistance, then tell us that too. And know that we will have your back. Every last one of us, we will have your back, because we all have social media, even me. We all have access to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and we can all use the Women's Vets hashtag to lift up your stories in the way they should be. And if we all keep on doing our part to celebrate these heroes, if we all keep joining forces, then I am confident that we can serve our men and women in uniform and our veterans as well as they have served this country. And that is the least we can do to honor them for everything they've done on our behalf. So I want to end today by once again thanking our service members, our service women, our veterans. It has been an honor to serve you. It has truly been one of the great gifts of being First Lady, to give you voice and to honor you and to make sure that you're never forgotten. I want to thank everyone here for being leaders in the work of supporting our men and women in uniform and their families. And as Jill said, we're going to keep doing this work long after we leave the White House. Thank you, and God bless.
Today was, again, are we blessed to have had the presence of the First Lady here today. Today, we have gathered here in the very heart of our democracy, in the halls of Congress. Above us, the Star-Spangled Banner flies in pride and in honor. From time to time, we present outstanding individuals with the flags that have flown above the Capitol in recognition of their contribution to our country. Rarely do we do so in Statuary Hall in the presence of such distinguished guests. The First Lady, I don't know if we say the Second Lady, the First Lady of the United States, and Dr. Jill Biden, as well as all of you. Right here before us is the flag that flew over the Capitol on January 1, 2016, the date General Vaught retired from the Women's Memorial Foundation. Now, in recognition of her service and in tribute to the service of all of America's women veterans, in the presence of the First Lady and so many members of Congress and all of you, it is our honor, all of you to join us in presenting Brigadier General Wilma Vaught, the U.S. Air Force, with this flag and with our nation's gratitude. God bless you, General, and God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain at your seats for the departure of the official party. Following their departure, please enjoy refreshments here at the Statuary Hall. Thank you.
Can't say that